This is Ambazonia Calling. News, analysis, commentary, opinion, editorials. Ambazonia Calling is a co-production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. Welcome. My name is Ntumfoyn Herbert, and I bring revolutionary greetings from our studios in Washington, D.C. to all of you, friends of Ambazonia and fellow Ambazonians on Ground Zero and across the globe.
The U.S. government has finally cut military aid to Cameroon following accounts of egregious violations. I am innocent here.
Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Lambert, Bomb.
Other slaves, especially house slaves, saw no need to run. Today, we see house slaves everywhere in various forms. This is Sia Jimvorambe.
Cameroon is a failed state, or in the process of failing. This is the monk from Ibalikumato.
French imperial greed is manipulating the European Union to become a bad Samaritan in the raging genocide in Amazonia. Tata Mentan for Ambazonia Calling.
It is our obligation to stand with the Ambazonian people.
I run my mansion with the tourism, women country, when a politician. We know could be second-class citizens then for this union with La Republic.
Elections in Ambazonia, an ever-evolving or elusive dream? This is Divine Angel.
No sky lockdown this. When they just sweep or picking them out of the house. This is a conspiracy.
We need the violence to stop. We need the killings to stop.
What my name is Herbert.
Tell me how well your lockdown is working. You've delivered. This is the mechanic.
This thing is not ending. If need be, we will continue it. We will extend it. But we have no choice.
We got punish you. Let me at the talk. FAKO must go.
It is a beautiful Sunday and we welcome you to Ambazonia Calling again. Thank you for spending some of your Sunday with us. We've got a fully loaded program for you this Sunday. It's been a big week of news, breaking news, some of it breaking our hearts. But we will start right away with our editorial for the week. Here is Lambert Bomb.
Former American President Calvin Coolidge once remarked that, and I quote, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, 'Press on,' has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race." End of quote. The Ambazonian Revolution is no different. It is persistence that gets the marathoner to the finish line. It is persistence and determination that guarantees success and positive results. The Ambazonian Revolution is in danger of imploding. We are on the cusp of a disaster. The clear lack of vision and strategy, or rather half-baked and hackneyed strategies, are about to derail the train. And this is partly because we are sapping at the persistence and determination of Ambazonians, especially those on Ground Zero. While the resilience of Ambazonians, especially on Ground Zero, has been formidable, one cannot continue to take this for granted. Policies like the recent lockdown may cripple the enemy's power of the purse and demonstrate who has the power and who holds power. But also, and unfortunately, one cannot discount the untold suffering and misery it is bringing on the people. Soon, this will boomerang. We must watch out not to push Ambazonians on the ground to seek protection with and from the very enemy we are running away from. It is getting to a point where we are alienating not only the power brokers, but even the Ambazonians on ground zero. The work of this liberation cannot be outsourced or mortgaged to a select few. When shall the pain, suffering, and misery of the people on ground zero be a major point of consideration in determining action plans for this revolution? All politics, they say, is local. An all-knowing diaspora, an all-powerful diaspora, is a danger to this struggle. When the strategies being bandied around are for arming civilians, then clearly something has gone awry with the struggle. There will come a time when the guns will be used against our very own. Ambazonian neighborhoods have become unsafe, even for Ambazonians. Those on the ground must take the responsibilities of managing this revolution, mindful of the exigencies on the ground. The diaspora must focus on the kind of external pressure that yielded results this week in the United States of America, while providing support to those on the ground. It is time to target the international purse of the colonizer. We can have all the guns and the best militia, and this will never get us across the finish line without the much-needed diplomacy. And so Ambazonians in every state in the United States must singly and collectively bring to their localities the Ambazonian conundrum. Ambazonians in the UK keep up the pressure with the House of Lords and also the Commonwealth, capitalizing on the recent outings from that house and ensuring that the pressure continues to mount from that end. Ambazonians in Belgium target the European Union. Those in Rome reach out to the Vatican. Soon, the presidential election cycle in the US will heat up. Ambazonians in the US must get into the fray and become contenders. In all this, France and its machinations through the zombies in Cameroon must always be highlighted as the real contention. These are not one-off moves, and then we expect the magic. No. Ambazonians must learn persistence and determination. Only these will pay off. In our determination and persistence, we must seek alternative approaches to achieving our sworn goal. Lambert Mbom for Ambazonia Calling.
Still ahead in this edition, we have The Devil Unmasked with Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta. We have a winner of the Nyamfuka of the Week. And we are not done until you have heard our letter to Joshua. So stay tuned, kick back, relax, and enjoy Ambazonia Calling. With tons of breaking news, we've got a bigger than usual news summary. Here's Innocentia with the first part of our news wrap-up for the week.
The U.S. government has finally cut military aid to Cameroon following accounts of egregious violations, targeted killings, torture, kidnapping, burning schools and villages by Cameroon forces trained by U.S. military.
What's been the reaction of the people on the ground, the ordinary Cameroonians, to this news? Oh my God, they are jubilating. You needed to see images and videos coming. It was like they had won a football tournament, which we were saying, this is just an announcement that they are cutting some aid. It's not like they've taken some drastic action in maybe sanctioning some of those key members within the government that are responsible for this. They're not there yet. But just the simple fact that the United States came out and said, we are cutting this aid, people were jubilating, which sends a strong message that the United States moved further to actually do what we or the people are calling them to do. Eric Aja, a political analyst.
Over 9 billion CFA francs, $17 million in military aid, would have been spent on patrol boats, armored vehicles, training, airplanes, and drones.
The issue on the Anglophone piece, I won't go into detail on that. I think the article plus the video this morning did a very good job of explaining the history of how it got to the point where we are today. In October of 2017, when it came kind of to a head, the Anglophone states said we want to actually form our own state, the Ambazonia state. There have been issues there with atrocities, issues with allegations of law of war issues, and this is something that it brings all this to a head. Over the last several months or so, the State Department has put on hold several security force assistance programs. Right before the election in October, I, with the ambassador, went and paid a visit with President Villa, and we had a very direct conversation with him with regards to investigation of these atrocities, transparency of these atrocities, and appropriate battlefield behavior. Since that time, the State Department has made a decision not to allocate significant money, but at the same time, they've released some money that's been on hold to things like Scan Eagle and Cessna aircraft that assist in the Boko Haram fight in the north. We were very emphatic with President Villa that the behavior of his troops, the lack of transparency, could have a significant impact on our ability to work with them.
Respective Ambazonian groups have steadfastly testified to select committees in the U.S. Congress that U.S. aid earmarked exclusively for use in the north against Boko Haram has been diverted to fight Ambazonians.
During the press conference in Paris, this question came up where they were asking the French authorities if they will follow suit with what the United States has done. They made it clear that they have a historical military cooperation with Cameroon, which prevents them from actually doing what the United States has done.
Balinyonga in the northern zone of Ambazonia has been blanketed over the last 48 hours, beginning Friday, by crossfire between genocidal colonial forces of La République du Cameroon and Ambazonia Restoration Forces. Reliable sources, including clergy on Ground Zero, have confirmed to Ambazonia Calling that 30 houses at the very minimum have been burned down by Bia's fire brigade. Other sources have counted more houses burned down on the major highway into Bali between Jenka and Ntumfoyn. Many homes have been vandalized. Restoration forces are reportedly fighting tooth and nail to fend off the onslaught that is targeted at eliminating any male children and men in the land.
I like them. Shoot them. Oh no. We'll fall back. We'll cross one time. We'll cross. They'll come back up. Go now. Cross. Don't have the shoe now. We'll cross. We'll cross. We'll fall. We'll cross. No. Now cross back.
As many as 13 soldiers have reportedly been killed in Besenge, Bisongabang by unidentified gunmen. Meantime, in Boya, several hundred young adult males and men were arrested throughout the week by forces of La République du Cameroon.
They are beating everybody in the junction. All the people they have caught, they are beating them. No exception, all the boys in the bike. They're beating them. Where God?
The arrests were amplified following the decapitation of a military officer by unknown forces.
This is Eric Ate, Director of Communications and Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. We have heard reports that Alhaji Baba Dampolo has hired fighters from the border areas between Nigeria and Cameroon to come to Ambazonia to confront our restoration forces.
Credible sources are confirming to Ambazonia Calling that the Isu local population and Ambazonian forces led by the Tigers have dealt deadly blows on the private militia of Alhaji Dampolo of Ndawara. The anti-Ambazonian pro-CPDM business mogul reportedly hired Chadian and Nigerian Fulani thugs to eradicate a population that has long resisted his attempts at seizing local farmlands for his cattle. Uncertainty looms within the self-styled interim government group following the resignation late Friday night and breaking Saturday of the group's Secretary of Communications, Chris Ano. A screenshot of the resignation letter from the group's IG policy forum on WhatsApp reads in part, quote, I'm sorry to say I'm done serving the IG. I think I will better serve this revolution going forward from the outside than sit here and see the fraud, cover-ups, and manipulations, end quote. The resignation letter comes amid strong allegations of infiltration by agents of La République du Cameroun of the self-styled interim government group. Very reliable sources to Ambazonia Calling reveal that Dr. Samuel Sako, Chris Anu, and John Nguyen have received significant sums of money from La République du Cameroun that makes contributions to My Trip to Boya chicken feed, and that the goal is to thwart any Ambazonian objective of effective collaboration among the respective restoration groups. Sources within the group reveal that Dr. Samuel Sako has been pleading for Chris Anu to withdraw his letter of resignation and stay in the fold. Recent high-profile resignations within the group include Nick Santos, formerly at the IG's Homeland Social Services, and Francis Awudu, ambassador to the Francophonie. Both resignations cited the same reasons enlisted by Chris Anu.
Dr. Nick Santos here, Yongambe man of the Ambazonia Revolution. I am flabbergasted after reading this message coming from Secretary Chris Anu. I thought at first it was one of those Photoshop messages, but my doubt was put to rest by the Secretary of State of Home Affairs, Mr. Etienne, who did confirm that the message was indeed coming from Secretary Chris Anu. Witchcraft is when somebody is now complaining of same things I said yesterday, for which he chastised me and accused me of being a liar. It now comes to a situation whereby he is saying the same things I said about 8 months ago. So it means that the nemesis, not only of the Ambazonia Revolution, but of the Ngambe man, is coming out to be true. I leave that to you, fellow Ambazonians. Dr. Nick Santos, have a blessed day.
You are listening to Ambazonia Calling, your space for educated news analysis, informed opinions, and commentary towards the recognition of a free, independent Ambazonia. I am Innocent. Stay with us.
One news wrap-up is never enough, so we're holding back Innocent for the second part of our news wrap-up. Here go.
Cameroon's Kangaroo Military Court in Yaoundé has reconvened to the 20th of February the hearing of the case of Colonial Cameroon versus Sissikwa, Yuk-Tabi and Co., charged inter alia with terrorism against the state of Cameroon. Whereas the session was supposed to ascertain the nationality of all Naira 10 defendants who have since denied their Cameroonian nationality, the sitting military judge was obliged to adjourn the session because the defense questioned the competency and rejected the court-appointed interpreter. Defense went as far as asking the judge to recuse himself from the case, as well as requested that English military judges be appointed to take over. In a revealing statement Friday, counsel for the defense from Nigeria, Honorable Oro Abdul, said, quote, "Cameroon itself is on trial and the world is watching. The bilingual, militocratic character of the Cameroonian state was yesterday brought to the trial at the Yaoundé Military Tribunal." End quote. Still in court news, while foreign diplomats from the United States, Belgium, the United Kingdom, Nigerian missions, representatives of the African Union and the European Union were given a red carpet treatment into the Kangaroo Military Court in the trial of Sissikwa, Yuk-Tabi and Co. versus La République du Cameroon, major news outlets including the BBC, RFE, and local Equinox TV were given the boot. Pro-government outlets, including state-run Cameroon Radio Television, CRTV, were granted access. Prince Fonchanje of Cameroon news agency CNA is reporting that police in Moliko Boya arrested a nursing student for videotaping the acts of genocide and other acts of violence that Cameroon's forces have been perpetrating on Ambazonians. Njongwan Emeline, fourth-year student at the Biaka University Institute of Boya, took a video of police officers carting men away in the early days of the ongoing lockdown. Still, according to the report, police are asking for 500,000 CFA bail to guarantee her release. A tribunal known as the Southern Cameroon Special Tribunal Coordination Committee announced February 5th its first accusation against Adolphe Lele Lafrique, governor of the Northwest Province of the Republic of Cameroon, for declaring war crimes against civil combatants. According to its coordinator, Dr. Jonathan Levy, investigations and evidence gathering is ongoing against Lafrique and plan to immediately start disseminating the particulars of the dossier to accredited national and international war crimes units, international government organizations, and will be laying criminal charges in third countries against the governor and other parties. It has received a mandate from several Ambazonian organizations, including the SCNC, SOCADEF, AGC, APLM, the Organization of Emerging African States, and the Cameroon Anglophone Civil Society Consortium. The BSCRF of General RK has entered into a collaboration agreement with the ADF in the fight against La République du Cameroon. Sources say generals from both groups also pledged that the ADF and BSCRF will not use their military advantage to seize political power in an independent southern Cameroon.
So that may always join war hand them. All man will be important. As I talk here, so man in a hierarchy. I run my mansion people with their tools in women country. When a politician. Why? Because I believe say that because of Una will fight. Maybe so. Then I believe say if we fight because of Una, now Una for ground supposed to give decisions the way they affect our lives. Maybe so. Simple. But because we're in the women country, they the only one talk, they sleep with their fine bed them, wife, fine thing, everything. They know the ship they were gone. They shoot now we. We didn't have hungry, they do now we, you know they do now them. But they don't decide to not unite for one man country for day for one more. As they make that a quarrel for one man country, now we pay with our lives for them. Maybe so. If they no one stand for mob, we'll go fix them. I prefer to take my vote. Vote Papa where I see every day the worker. So maybe mayor, maybe governor for ground. Because I know say tomorrow, if you fight for me, I go run knock the door.
Finally, Cameroon's genocidal forces are extended their cruelty to pets. On Thursday, February 7th, social media went abuzz with Cameroon's special forces skinning and roasting dogs for food at the Bamenda Congress Hall.
Je vais envoyer ça à Andy. Andy a fallu le chien à Yaoundé en vrai qu'il n'a pas trouvé. Voilà ça ici. La chèvre du bazar. Un costaud chien, mon frère. Tu vas chop ça, non? Non, c'est la magie.
Observers say it is a sign that Biya government is unable to pay salaries to soldiers that further face crimes against humanity at the end of the war. Last week around Sabga, a Banso woman played the Good Samaritan and provided food to 4 starving Chadian soldiers who were stranded by the roadside and could barely walk, let alone bear their arms. Innocent Chia, Ambazonia Calling.
Restoration train is going to the mountains. Restoration train is going to Bamenda. Restoration train is going on to Boya on the restoration journey of our liberty. liberty. Restoration train is moving very steadily. Restoration train is hooting very loudly. Restoration train to carry everybody on the restoration journey of our liberty.
We will return to more news stories in the course of this program. For the time being, let me turn my attention to Tanya Jude Agua Ozugen, who says he's got some trouble getting the ink in his pen to flow. Or is it the ink in his blood? He's writing about the troubles of the IG group.
Almost a year when the self-declared interim government transitioned to FAKO, I have been searching for valedictory encomiums. The more I try to pen anything, the more my ink ceases to flow. A decision to raise $1 million in a carefully designed scheme codenamed My Trip to BOYO was admirable and courageous. FAKO was right about the irresistible propensity of Ambazonians to fund the struggle, though that could easily be dismissed as an open book because a people battling an existential crisis with their backs to the wall do not have the luxury of examining every option under the sun. It is a people as determined and as generous about their cause as Ambazonians that fall prey readily to even apprentice con artists. The Femania can only be made easier if those preaching the gospel of hand me your purse and wallet also happen to appear meek, modest, and unassuming. Victims of scams will tell you that such a demeanor is more effective at emptying pockets than holding a pistol to a bank's cashier's head. Speaking specifically of the IG group, more than a few should have been warned when the video surfaced saying the man at the helm of the self-proclaimed rebranded Skakov Governing Council believed in dictatorship. Flashing red lights should have turned on in innocent brains when Sako pompously announced that he had been invited by the United Nations to speak at the 4th Committee of the General Assembly on Decolonization, a feat that would have proven that he is a representative of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, otherwise known as the Western Sahara. Over the last few days, with an irresponsible lockdown on ground zero, turning Ambazonians into game and hostages for colonial forces, the silent MOMO that the IG group has lost its bearings turned into loud cries. Some went as far as arguing that the entire IG group is utterly clueless about the basic tenets of a revolutionary struggle. The lack of a vision has left the door ajar for agents provocateurs like Eric Tator to set the tone for its operation. The wisest and calmest of Ambazonians, people like Chief Justice Ayapo Abine, have not been able to contain their frustration, going to the extent of suggesting in one posting that a few screws may be off. Some of the many political ashawos in this revolution can only be followed if Ambazonians can take directions from the wind. The rift between the camps, both within and outside the IG group, have grown from small cracks to huge ravines. The events of the last 3 days within the IG group, combined with the verbal audit that Sako was asked to provide in communications with Sisiko Ayoktabe, may be the last straw that broke the camel's back. It is said that when God closes a door, he opens a window. Ambazonians must not jubilate at anyone being ousted. This is what coups look and smell like. It is certainly not the first coup of the Ambazonian revolution. The third conclave was a coup when it refused to implement the main resolution of the second conclave, packing the deck in order to ensure the setting up of the grandfather of the current setup. Zaria was the graduation ceremony of this political femania. Philadelphia, at the end of this month, can become another coup, with its leaders surviving until when the next coup is organized, or Ambazonians can finally give themselves a legitimate leadership voted into office in a manner that leaves the international community with no doubt as to who represents Ambazonians, and let the world see that other options like decentralization and federalism, peddled by Cardinal Tumi's AGC and others, represent a tiny minority. So long as Ambazonians do not do the right thing, they provide the pretext opponents of our march to independence need in order to claim that somehow federalists come even remotely close to the number of pro-independent Ambazonians. The window God has opened for Ambazonians is the invitation that has been out there since the mess was done in Zaria to come back to the drawing board, present and analyze the progress achieved so far and the current situation on the ground with candor, and use our failures to avoid future pitfall and our success to build on accelerating the march to BOYO. It will be a bigger blunder to patch a broken calabash with another ill-conceived conclave, because we will only be postponing the problem as we did in Zaria. If Ambazonians fare for Zaria, they can consider themselves Premier Gao. Surely they can never be Deuxième Gao, because they will be Nyata. This is Tani Jude Agua Ozugen from Ambazonia Calling.
Ambazonia Calling. You are in the heart of the news shrine. Call us the Kalakuta Republic of commentary, opinion, and editorials. Part of the trouble that Ambazonians face is just a simple one. That slaves don't recognize when they're slaves, people in captivity don't seem to want to be free. It is the case of house slaves, as Barrister C. Ajimvambe now reports.
Bob Marley, one of the great philosophers of our time, said it all in his classic hit, Redemption Song. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Remember that? Well, if Bob were alive today, he'd be amazed and extremely disappointed at the persisting and increasing rate of mental servitude among us. It is very disheartening how some Ambazonians remain mentally enslaved to La République du Cameroon, to the extent that they are quick to sing the La République chorus and point the fat finger of blame at Amber boys whenever acts of violence occur in Ambazonia, even when it's been established time without number who the real perpetrators or facilitators of such acts are. We at Ambazonia Calling vehemently condemn violence of any sort, including the destruction of property. However, we cannot but shake our heads and wonder aloud at the self-righteous outcry, finger-pointing, and dumping of blame on Amber boys each time atrocities are committed in Ambazonia. Amber boys, just like the rest of us, are certainly not saints. However, the constant rush by some to blame them for atrocities begs the question as to who these finger-pointers and professional blamers really are. During the days of slavery, some slaves never gave up trying to regain their freedom. Not even the chopping off of their limbs stopped them from repeatedly attempting to run away from their slave masters. Other slaves, especially house slaves, saw no need to run, and in fact were the spies and blacklegs who alerted the master each time one of their fellow slaves ran away. Today, we see house slaves everywhere in various forms. Those that have gotten or have been promised something by the master, those that have acquired a little wealth, perhaps built a house or started a business, those that consider themselves financially secure and don't give a damn whether the less fortunate live or die. Those that are so petrified that if freedom were indeed to come, everyone would have access to opportunities that would elevate them, such that these petrified slaves would lose their social status and have to admit those they considered lesser than into their exclusive circles. These are usually the house slaves that jump up and point fingers at Amber boys, knowing very well who the real thugs and terrorists in Ambazonia are. Could you possibly be a house slave? In any case, house slaves or none, what God has ordained shall indeed come to pass. We must all watch out for these house slaves, expose them, and use all peaceful means to prevent them from blocking our path to freedom. More importantly, we must do everything within our power to ensure that we are not enslaved ourselves, be it physically or mentally.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Number 2 cells can free our mind. Whoa.
This is Sia Jimbo-Ambe for Ambazonia Calling.
Welcome to our special interview segment, The Devil Unmasked, The Truth Out. Welcome, Professor Emmanuel Tata-Menton, to The Devil Unmasked.
Thanks for your welcome, Ntumfoyn.
What are we going to be unmasking today?
Let us unmask how France is remote controlling the European Union to become a bad Samaritan in its imperial genocide in Amazonia.
Can you briefly explain what you see as France's manipulation in the genocide in Amazonia?
I'll readily do so, Ntumfoyn. Today, the European Union is calling for a solution to socio-political problems to restore the so-called peace in Cameroon. This simply means that France has led the European Union by the nose into defining the problem as a domestic one, not an interstate problem.
It would seem that the French have been engineering other monkey business in this Franco-Ambazonian war. Is my assessment correct?
Very correct, Ntumfoyn. France, first of all, twisted the problem into a mere language one, that is, English versus French, and recommended the creation of a bilingualism and multiculturalism commission to divert attention away from the real problems presented by colonization and colonialism in Amazonia by its teleguided, beleaguered Satanic Republic of Cameroon.
What else have the French got up their sleeve?
When France discovered that Ambazonians knew its bilingualism and multiculturalism solution was a laughingstock, France tried to redefine it in terms of so-called ethnic affinities. In fact, France started campaigns, say to the palace of Fonanguafo and many other palaces, telling the people, according to its divide and rule ethnic politics of Sawa and Grafi, whatever they call it. This archaic maneuver was blown in the face of France itself.
And what did France do?
France told Lucifer Paul Biya to use force and crush the Ambazonian uprising or intifada within 2 weeks militarily to restore the so-called law and order. That was after Lucifer Paul Biya failed to stifle the Ambazonian uprising following the massive protests of October 1st, 2017. And at that time, you very well know that they were using helicopter gunships to hunt down unarmed protesters like game, as well as renting troops from neighboring Francophone African countries to massacre peace plant-carrying protesters.
How successful have they been with the repressive methods?
These methods failed like a failed coup, Ntumfoyn.
So what did France try next?
France instructed its demented Lucifer Paul Biya to declare war, outright war, and frighten Amazonians into total submission. This, Ntumfoyn, as we very well know, Lucifer Paul Biya did at Simalan International Airport on his return from Côte d'Ivoire on the 30th of November 2017.
How has the all-war strategy worked out for the colonialists and their sponsor, France?
I think the poorly tooled war strategy has succeeded in imposing gruesome crimes against humanity or atrocious crimes committed by the marauding armed robbers called Cameroon Army. But apparently, these atrocious crimes, Ntumfoyn, have not broken the will of Ambazonians.
Has France backed down from pursuing these strategies given their failure?
Not at all, Ntumfoyn. France has negotiated some new methods. 1. Intensify the genocide using weapons of mass destruction, like chemical weapons, I mean. sucked the Nigerian military under an embattled president like General Muhammadu Buhari into the war, importing mercenary troops from Chad and recruiting Islamic terrorist fighters under the command of warlords like Alhaji Baba Danpula of Bamenda and Ahmadu Ali of the Far North region to join in the extermination of Ambazonians.
The French are obviously doing more.
I think there is another move recommended by France Ntumfoyn. France recommended the theatrics being played by Professor Maurice Kamto to protest peacefully against the electoral hold-up 4 months after the proclamation of election results, as well as the sudden attack of a Bolova by so-called rebels. According to France, the multiple conflicts would attract and set the stage for dialogue under its control with the support of the European Union, especially Switzerland.
Is one conflict not enough? What is the wisdom of multiplying conflicts?
Ntumfoyn, as you very well know and you can see readily, France is now using the multiple conflicts to manipulate the international community, even including the United Nations, into summoning an inclusive dialogue to solve the socio-political problems to restore peace in Cameroon. This is where the United Nations and the European Union have been dragged into the role of a bad Samaritan by France. Just ask yourself, Ntumfoyn, which bank has Christian Cardinal Tumi broken to get money for dispatching envoys around the world to preach federalism? Who is sponsoring these wasteful trips on living together abroad, while unarmed civilians are being butchered daily and nightly in Ambazonia? Peace at what cost and for who?
What word do you have for the federalism evangelists that have been sent around the world globe-trotting to preach on behalf of Cardinal Tumi's AGC, given especially that some of them have certificates, diplomas in law?
Ntumfoyn, I wish to remind the peace evangelists that I know there are men of law in their group. Let them be reminded that the Federal Republic of Cameroon was recognized by various states and was a subject of international law. However, it was never a member of the United Nations for the simple reason that it never applied for UN membership. The United Nations records simply continued French Cameroon membership granted in September 1960. The implication was and still is that the Federal Republic of Cameroon and its successors was considered as simply an enlarged French Cameroon. Interestingly, Ntumfoyn, following the creation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963, the Federal Republic of Cameroon was one of its founding members and was designated simply as Cameroon. The important qualifier, Federal Republic of, was never included. Hence, the expansionist intention had always been very clear in the minds of French teleguided Satanic Republic of Cameroon. Federalism with the Satanic Republic of Cameroon is a no-show to all sane Ambazonians.
I'm not the one saying it. Everyone can see the European Union is in disarray for many reasons, including Brexit, the migrant crisis that they have, the yellow vest in France, the attacks that the French government is now taking from Italy, for one example, because of what they are doing with colonial pacts, including the colonial CFA, which Italy has been heroically denouncing. Bravo, Italia. All these EU members that France has been manipulated, they have known better. They have stood with Ambazonia before, right?
All the European Union UN member states, except France, voted for the independence of the Southern Cameroons on April 21, 1961 at the United Nations. Fate has given that European Union the opportunity to be heroic in solving the French-engineered genocide in Ambazonia. But French maneuvers are making them to turn their backs on that opportunity. The European Union is in the singular position of being able to save Ambazonia from the meticulously orchestrated genocide by the Satanic Republic of Cameroon, and they are choosing to do nothing. Yielding to the French tricks of seeking dialogue to solve the multiplying socio-political problems in Cameroon is a misreading of the stakes and magnitude of genocide. For such naive sermonization, the European Union will have to answer to its own withered soul forever as a bad Samaritan.
What now is the game plan for these monsters who are after Ambazonian blood?
The brokering of peace by the European Union is basically the last ace of their sleeves, the last hurrah of the French satanic empire of Cameroon.
Professor Tatamenta, could you explain to our listeners what this French plan consists of?
The plan has been that if they hold off the key Ambazonian strongholds, they could then subdue the rest with mere administrative terrorism and brutal warlords like Alhaji Danpolo. After that, they hope that Ambazonian restorationist forces would be tired enough to want to sign a peace treaty eagerly from a position of weakness. That is the plan, of course, but it should not work like the French-sponsored Lucifer Paul Biya wants.
Now, can that plan work? Do you see it ever working?
It is pure fantasy, of course. Hitler Paul Biya is dreaming of a glorious day of victory with a surprise attack that would hopefully split the Ambazonian restorationist forces and wreak enough havoc to force a peace treaty with a beleaguered Ambazonia, but time is certainly not on the side of Lucifer Paul Biya.
By all indications, the United Nations is confused. What would you tell Secretary General Antonio Guterres at this moment?
Secretary General Antonio Guterres should abandon his obsession with collecting golden statues from bloodthirsty dictators of the likes of Lucifer Paul Biya and embark on stopping wars before they start. The suppression of war has been the primary objective of the United Nations for many decades, and stopping a war before it starts is easier than ending a war already underway.
Many people frustrated by the lack of effectiveness of UN prevention would laugh at the idea of prevention of conflict, but prevention does work.
One of the supreme creations of the human spirit is the idea of prevention. Like liberty and equality, it is a seminal concept drawn from a reservoir of optimism that centuries of epidemics, famines, and wars have failed to deplete. It is an amalgam of hope and possibility, which assumes that misery is not an undefiable mandate of fate, a punishment only redeemable in a later life, but a condition that can be treated like a disease and sometimes cured or even prevented. Why not? The conquest of smallpox, for example, one of the highest or history's most dearest scourges, deadliest scourges, is itself a triumph of prevention.
What message do you have for Ambazonian restoration forces?
What is truly remarkable, Ntumfoyn, is that Ambazonian restoration forces are still able to put up any resistance at all against an army that had been trained and richly equipped with the most destructive weapons on earth, especially weapons of mass destruction. However, knowing that time is no longer on his side, Lucifer Paul Biya is reaching for any straw that would buy him and his monstrous demonic regime in Yaoundé time. It is heartening that there is also still a remarkable level of morale in the Ambazonian restorationist forces. There is confidence in their patriotic fighting spirit, as you readily see, Ntumfoyn, in their ancient equipment and their fighting ability right up until the lockdown today. The ability to endure and prevail, and those young Ambazonian restoration forces are bravely doing now, is a model that they should not be too quick to abandon in this decisive hour.
That is all we've got time for. Thank you very much, Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta, for joining us on The Devil of Mask. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you for this conversation, Ntumfoyn.
This thing will go on for 50 and 100 years. You cannot kill everybody. And even if you kill everybody, the stones would avenge for the blood that spills on them. The soil will get up and start fighting.
You have plenty of show yet to come, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
The people of West Cameroon cannot be your slaves. The people of West Cameroon are not, you did not conquer them in war. The problem we have in West Cameroon is the problem that will bring down Cameroon. When people have had pent-up anger and pain, humiliation, for over 50 years, when it bursts out, you will never be able to control it.
They will sooner realize that the people of Ambazonia will not surrender. They will sooner realize that you can arrest and kill, but the more you arrest and kill, the more you energize the people's spirit.
The leaders of a coalition of over 200 organizations worldwide are calling on the United Nations, especially the United Nations Human Rights Commission, when it opens its 40th session on the 25th of February 2019, to look into the Ambazonia situation and to bring violence on the ground to a halt.
We believe that an HRC-mandated fact-finding mission would have the immediate effect of quelling violence on the ground. An HRC-mandated fact-finding mission is necessary because the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has twice requested access and been denied by the Cameroonian government. That is why we have written a letter to the UNHRC, which is being delivered today.
They're asking the United Nations to do its job.
The signatories of this letter are part of an emerging global initiative to end the Cameroon colonial conflict.
These organizations held 3 press conferences across the globe. On Saturday, there was a press conference in Geneva, there was one in Johannesburg, and the last one held in the United States of America. At the podium at the press conference in the United States to introduce the initiative and the letter that was being delivered to the United Nations today, the spokesperson for the Global Coalition, an Ambazonian, a proud Ambazonian, Eben Egbe, took the floor first to lay out why this coalition is getting together and to open a little window into the horror that is unfolding in Ambazonia. Here is Eben Egbe.
The Norwegian Refugee Council reported in December that the number of people displaced by this particular conflict had grown something like 40% during the months between June and November. A situation that forced the UN to acknowledge that this conflict is essentially one of the fastest growing conflict-driven displacements in Africa. The primary driver of these displacements is the extreme vicious attack of Cameroon forces and the way they target civilian communities, the civilian population in Ambazonia. For example, on February the 2nd, at the funeral procession of the principal of one of the major colleges in Batibo, the Cameroon government troops opened fire at the procession, killing the surviving wife and daughter of the gentleman who was supposed to be buried on that day. Yesterday, about 14 people were killed in the market when troops got into the market and opened fire at people in the market. I couldn't be more grateful as an Ambazonian to the network of civil liberty leaders and civil society leaders and peace movement that stepped up to join us in this effort to try to get the international community to take the appropriate decisions to try to put an immediate halt to the killings and probably pave a way to peaceful resolution of this conflict. But this conflict has been going on for 3 decades. And the primary reason, I think, is because it remained a peaceful-led process in this conflict. This conflict started in 1961 when, after Ambazonians decided in the wave of a Pan-African storm that was raising the continent to join with their brothers, they came in with their own constitution, their own judicial system, their own parliament, and tried to join with Cameroon to create a bigger zone to ignore colonial boundaries that were built and try to forge society together that is focused on their own interests. It just became clear to them that they had miscalculated the political status of Cameroon. Apparently, Cameroon has not successfully decolonized. And so instead of joining fellow Africans to forge a new African, West Africa in which they could defend and define their own future, they ended up becoming sucked into a state of a neo-colonial state. And so that's the onset of this struggle. This peaceful movement had for its slogan, the argument of force and not the force of argument. Because we were so confident of the basis of our legal status, of the international laws binding relationship between countries, that we just couldn't imagine that we're not going to win this case anywhere it was going to go. And it stayed like that. This movement stayed like that, peaceful and forged on for 3 decades. That was until 2017, in October 1, when the government decided to use helicopter gunship to mow down peaceful protesters. That was the first time in the history of the 3-decade struggle that some people in Ambazonia decided to defend their communities with force. The experience remained that every time the UN Human Rights Commission or any UN institution, the Assembly or the Security Council had mandated any commission of inquiry, that always stemmed the violence down. That's what we need. We need the violence to stop. We need the killings to stop. Perpetrators understand that the mandating of a UN institution or a UN or the Human Rights Council, the mandating of a commission of inquiry is a signal that there will be accountability. And that signal is the recent history shows that people respond adequately to.
This is Ambazonia. One nation, one soul, one people. Sacrificing, bleeding, and yes, dying if need be, until we kick the colonialists out and enthrone a government of the people in BOYO. Speaking after Herbert was Reverend Dr. Emma Jordan Simpson, the director of the U.S. branch for the International Fellowship of Reconciliation.
We're here today to add our voices, to add the weight, our concern, and the power of our spiritual convictions to this call to stop the violence. We believe that the Ambazonian struggle is a struggle for basic human rights and self-determination, and as such, it is consistent with the International Declaration of Human Rights, and as such, it is our obligation. It is our obligation to stand with the Ambazonian people. We want the UN to know, as leaders of faith and conscience representing groups across the world that are deeply committed to the creation of peace and justice through the transformative power of nonviolence, we're doing more than praying. We are monitoring the UN's action or inaction. We know that the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has twice already requested and been denied access by the Cameroon government. We must now mandate and dispatch a fact-finding mission, because time is of the essence and lives are at stake. And this should happen during this 40th session, which begins later this month on February 25th. We want for those who are struggling for peace in Ambazonia to hear our voices. We want them to know that we hear their voices. We want them to see our efforts to amplify their struggle. We want them to know that we see their efforts and that they are not alone. And we will work together, stand together to work cooperatively to lift up our voices until their voices are heard. And I have to say that as a Baptist, I believe in the basic right of all people to have self-determination and to live freely. We will all continue to work cooperatively across the world, and particularly in the region, to lift up the Ambazonian voices. And we stand together focused on an immediate end to this violence, and we call on the United Nations Human Rights Committee to embrace a sense of urgency.
The Secretary General of the International Peace Researchers Association, Professor Mark Meyer, was the third speaker to take the floor.
There is no longer any controversy. Leading British historical and legal agencies, and none other than French President Emmanuel Macron, have equally and recently asserted colonialism was and is a crime against humanity. As such, United Nations protocols empower all peoples and parties to act with the, quote, responsibility to prevent genocide and the, quote, responsibility to protect. It is not so useful in the case of the Cameroons or Ambazonia to spend time debating who is most at fault. Is it the government in Yaoundé or the man Paul Biya, who has been president since I was 19 years old? is it the original French colonists who, along with their British counterparts, set up this competitive, divided we fall scramble way back when? Is it the UN in failing to oversee the promises made decades ago? Perhaps it's the children of Ambazonia who, frustrated at increasing police and military violence and little to show for decades of completely nonviolent and unarmed actions against their colonial predicament, pick up some stones to defend themselves just over the past year. There is enough guilt to go around, and we say again, it is not so useful to spend time debating who is most at fault. The UN mandated responsibility to protect and the responsibility to prevent genocide, equally, especially in cases of contemporary ongoing colonialism, is the responsibility of all of us. It is certainly the responsibility of the United Nations member states, with an emphasis on those who currently make up the Human Rights Council, which soon meets in Geneva. But it is also the responsibility of non-governmental organizations, organizations like the International Peace Research Association. And yes, it's the responsibility of media as well, to remember that even conflicts which appear small in places which are not easily found on maps require our urgent attention and solidarity. We need only reflect on the upcoming 25th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide and the ongoing tensions in the Great Lakes region to be clear about that. Calls like this one to the UNHRC, which we sign on to today, are vital. We repeat, colonialism was, and in Ambazonia today, colonialism still is, a crime against humanity.
So get on now on the train, everybody. Get on now on the train. Mothers, fathers, get on now on the train. Children, get on now on the train. Sister, brothers, get on now on the train. Husbands, wives too, get on now on the train. Oh, Abba, Father, bless us. Oh, Jesus Christus, guide us. Oh, Holy Spirit, lead us on the restoration journey of our liberty. So, restoration train is our freedom train.
Sometimes in a revolution, people forget why they're fighting, what they should be doing. Here is the monk from Ibali Kumato with a reminder of exactly why Ambazonians are in this revolution.
Since 1945, the citizens of the Cameroons have been the guinea pig of an international post-colonization conspiracy spearheaded by France. If you are a citizen of the former British Southern Cameroons, also known as Ambazonia, and you did not know about France and its policy to melt a nation of 8 million Africans like 2 cubes of sugar in a basin of water called France-Afrique, now you know. As a result of endemic dysfunction and blatant illegalities, the union of 2 states with equal status between the African people of British Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, and other African people of French Cameroon has degenerated into a dysfunctional situation. A few minds are beginning to nod their heads towards the conclusion that Cameroon is a failed state or in the process of failing. If history is witness, citizens of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia jumped this boat of dysfunction a while ago. In 1984, the Franco-Cameroon President and Parliament of Cameroon signed into law to constitutionally change the name of the United Republic of Cameroon to simply Republic of Cameroon. To put this situation in indelible ink, British Southern Cameroon citizen Fon Gorgi Dinka used existing laws, high court judgments, and the force of argument to cement the declaration and proclamation of our independent state, the Republic of Ambazonia. Making use of domestic laws on the one hand and international laws on the other, Dinka crafted the literature and vocabulary to formalize the restoration of the statehood of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. Since 1961, from one illegality to the other, France and Franco-Cameroon have proven that they will go to any length to cause harm to the people of the state of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. The list of our ancestors who have stood up to this bullying by France and Franco-Cameroon is long and recorded for posterity. So, in the case of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia versus Franco-Cameroon and France, we fight. We fight for the restoration of the total independence of Ambazonia without any compromise. Our restoration is rooted and grounded in constitutionality, which defines our sovereignty as an independent nation. We fight. We fight to end the butchering of our citizens by Franco-Cameroon and French armed agents. We fight to restore the human dignity of all our citizens. Half a century of watching humans treated like animals in front of their own children has nothing to do with African customs. We fight. We fight to restore the functionality of government by, for, of the people with a system and framework that efficiently delivers the products and services that our citizens need to become all that they can be in one lifetime. We fight. We fight to end the use of French to conduct our national business. It is an unnecessary overhead for the time being and a nuisance at best. We fight. We fight to restore institutions of national life that are crucial for almost all our citizens. The foundation of our legal system is based on common law. Our education system is based on the Anglo-Saxon system. Both systems have been under asymmetric assault by Franco-Cameroon through dishonest policy implementations and pretend projects with dubious and unaccountable outcomes by every measure. We fight. We fight to stop unnecessary interference, dilution, or assimilation of these systems into some netherworld of incomprehension and outright dysfunction. We fight. We fight to bring adults to their senses and for them to assume and take responsibility for fixing problems created and made worse by more than half a century of dishonesty to the children of this sub-region in the Gulf of Guinea, the restored state of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. We are already half a century late in the game. There is little time to waste anymore. There is only work to do as far as the eye can see. Fight, we must. This is the monk from Ibalikumato for Ambazonia Calling.
Stay tuned. Ambazonia Calling will be right back with more news, analysis, commentary, opinion, and editorials. If there's only one convention you should attend this year,
it's a new year.
It is the COM convention.
Another year for us to share.
The 15th annual AFWACOM convention is holding in Phoenix, Arizona from the 19th to the 23rd of June 2019.
USA, yeah.
Buy your ticket, book your hotel room before it's too late. Everyone is going to Arizona.
America, yibala koma, yamle.
Come to my people and be spoiled. Come and help us develop the COM Palace, develop the COM Kingdom. Come to the happiest people on earth. Come and have a great Njang time. The Washington Post published a prominent article on Ambazonia this week. They also released a video on the Cameroons, and the reporter who shot the video and wrote the article made media appearances to discuss the war ongoing in Ambazonia. However, the reporting from the Washington Post, and this is not the first time they are doing this to Ambazonia, was not fair. For instance, for the video, they interviewed several government officials, but they did not interview a single pro-independence leader. And when the reporter made an appearance on radio, they claimed that there was absolutely no way the international community would entertain the possibility of Ambazonia emerging as a country.
Siobhan O'Grady has been to the trouble region to investigate the escalating violence and joins us now. I mean, just tell us what you saw, first of all.
Hi there. First of all, the Cameroonian government actually did block the Washington Post from accessing the Anglophone regions while we were on the ground. They did not allow us to actually get to those two regions, but we were able to interview a number of English speakers who had been displaced from those regions and had sought shelter in the French-speaking regions. So in gathering testimony from those people who were witnesses and victims of attacks on their villages, they described how government forces would often come to their villages, possibly, presenting themselves as looking for separatist fighters, but often opened fire indiscriminately and would target civilians. At times, people were giving us testimony saying that they had witnessed forces executing an elderly woman, a pregnant woman, and definitely unarmed civilians.
And they were certain, were they, that these were Cameroonian, soldiers, security forces?
Yes, so we asked for descriptions of the uniforms that they were wearing, and one woman who gave us testimony that her pregnant friend was shot was able to even describe the Special Forces unit vest that one soldier was wearing who pulled the trigger, she said, on her friend. And so they were quite certain that they were the military, in part because the separatist fighters are not usually wearing uniforms.
Right, and atrocities on both sides, as far as you saw, or not?
Yeah, we've been hearing, in terms of the separatist violence, there have been attacks on schools and definitely attacks against the military. Most civilians didn't actually describe to the Washington Post any attacks by the separatists themselves, but human rights groups have certainly collected testimony that the separatists are also at times targeting civilians who don't agree with their more extreme views that the only path forward is full separation from Cameroon. There are a lot of moderate English speakers who are now sort of caught between both sides. Maybe they wanted some more freedom or autonomy from the largely French-speaking government, but didn't actually believe that full separation was feasible or what really made the most sense. And now they've been stuck between these two groups.
Well, could that still be possible, some degree of greater autonomy? Is that a possible compromise?
I think that's the only compromise that the international community really sees as feasible right now. It's pretty difficult to create an entirely new state, and the Ambazonian forces are still relatively small compared especially to Cameroon's national military, and many civilians fear, even if they agree with the idea behind the separatists, that they are actually ill-equipped to face the military.
It is shameful to hear a reporter from the Washington Post make the claims that have just been made there, including that the international community would not entertain an independent state of Ambazonia, that apparently there are many people who would prefer not to embrace what she calls extremist views, that it is not feasible to create another country and it will not be tolerated by the international community. I'm sure that was said of Eritrea, of Timor-Leste, of Kosovo before. And then the argument that because Ambazonia doesn't have a fighting force at this moment means it is condemned, fails to recognize that Israel did not have a force when it was created. It built a force.
Restoration, restoration, restoration train is going to the borders. Ntumfoyn, restoration train is going straight to Kumba. And to Kumbo, restoration train is going on to Bali. And to Mamfe, restoration train is going to Victoria. And to whom? Restoration train is going to Muyuka and to Ekok.
We don't do foolish, but when there are capital fools out there, we make it our duty to find them, and every week we crown one of them the Nyamfuka of the Week. Here now with the kings and queens of foolish for this week is Veronique Vetumfe.
The third place finisher this week is a citizen of the neighboring colonial republic of Cameroon. He used to be a loud defender of the rights of the Bamileke people. He is on video stressing that he will lead riots if Dictator Biya cheats at elections. He won sympathy from Ambazonians when he argued forcefully that Ambazonian leaders abducted and held in jails and dungeons of La République are hostages. That was when he was hungry and still begging for a job in the regime of colonial Cameroon. Ever since he was called to table, Minister MOMO swallowed every criticism he ever uttered against the regime, to the point that the regime recruited him to go on TV and advocate genocide for his own people, while victimizing the victims of the Holocaust under Hitler. Minister MOMO has yet to apologize for blaming Jews for the Holocaust and making light on the Rwandan genocide. And for that reason is the bronze place finisher for the crown of shame this week. Them all. Winning the silver medal for foolishness this week is someone we have had to resurrect from the graveyard of retired multiple award winners of this crown. Had to resist waking the dead when the foolishness that is in need of being rewarded combines recklessness and callousness. Without regard for the welfare of Ambazonians on ground zero, the fellow who has been nicknamed the Gary Master, Eric Tato, is out there calling for another lockdown of an indefinite duration, perpetually to prevent the entry of poisoned food and other necessities of life from colonial Cameroon into Ambazonia. Eric Tato, who has no qualms recommending that civilians be targeted and executed should dare to not follow his orders, is this week's runners-up for the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week. Nyamfuka them all. Winning gold this week and lifting the crown of shame is French President Emmanuel Macron, who also doubles as the supreme leader of the terrorist forces of colonial Cameroon in Ambazonia. This week, France not only continued its efforts working with Switzerland and a bunch of European Union member states to frustrate Ambazonians' march to freedom. While the United States announced its decision to turn off financial military support to Yaoundé over the genocidal violence in Ambazonia, Emmanuel Macron reaffirmed that Paris will stand by and continue to fund Biya's terrorist government. As in Haiti, where the French perpetrated genocide, as in Algeria and Madagascar, where the French perpetrated genocide, as in Vietnam and in Bamileke and Bassa homelands of the Republic of Cameroon, where the French did the same. As in Rwanda, where the French has been accused of doing the same, Emmanuel Macron insists to do foolish by funding the genocide in Ambazonia, making him this week's winner of the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week.
Nyamfuka them all.
This is Veronique Vetimfe for Ambazonia Calling.
Nyamfuka them all.
Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideas, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love. For in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsels of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here, and whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive Him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations.
The war in Ambazonia is very stressful for our people. That's how wars are. And so we are delighted that from time to time, and despite the pain, despite the suffering, despite the massacres, that someone finds a way of just putting a smile on our people's face by finding and cracking the right jokes and turning up some really great war humor. Here we go with some war comedy.
Oh, Eddie, Dr. Fedina, Godfrey for the family, cousin. Then we are suffering for the war. Now, how can we do? Let me pray for we. Because we are suffering, we are not eating, no way to cooking. How can we do? That's God created way to suffer like that. Or how can we suffer like that? Well, pray to we as we are suffering. No way to walk, no way to eating, no way to drink water. How can we do? How come this every day running? We were putting chop for fire, no way to eating. Even your father just sit like that on the bush. Where I'm not cooking nothing. We were running. Sometimes they say that they are coming back. This is they are coming. We are starting running. How can we do? How can we do for the war? Mona, pray for we. We are dry off.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down.
And I call on all Cameroon soldiers to lay down their arms within Ambazonia and to turn their arms against the very system that has made them slaves in the land of their birth.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
Here is our letter to Joshua.
Dear Joshua, please don't mind Uncle Sam. I hear you spend the entire night just wailing, just weeping at the fact that they had turned off the financial tap to your military supplies. I mean, it's all the fault of the advisors. You have to blame them for everything. I mean, Uncle Sam himself, he's fine. Doesn't bother too much. As a good friend of yours, I gave him the message about what you do with the military budget. I told them that you don't spend the military budget on the military. That these funds, whether they come from international organizations, they come from donors, the money comes, it goes to the treasury, but it is already en route for your retirement accounts in Switzerland, in Cayman Islands, in the Bahamas. It just goes off to Barbados. It doesn't sit around there waiting. So anyone else who's thinking about cutting military support, like the Israelis, after getting a public apology, they're still considering cutting military support. I mean, they should think about this, because the money, really, you're not spending it on the military. When I told people here in Uncle Sam's country, they were asking, hey, what happens? How can he spend so much money? And I said, well, the man's nickname is Job Report. So don't worry about him. The only thing I told them and I insisted is that if you were spending any money on the military, if you were spending any money on the boys, the ones that wear khaki, the wicked gendarmes, and the ones that are named after Manawas, the version of Gestapo that you have there, if you were spending any money of them, they would not be stealing, slaughtering, and feasting on gondoks in Abakwatan. I am really surprised that you could not corrupt the officers who wrote the report. I mean, they were there with you in Gola, or you don't know where they live. They're right there. Don't tell me that you ran out of golden trophies to hand out, because you have to have a permanent supply of golden trophies. It should be with you all the time. If somebody greets you, good morning, sir, golden trophy. Good afternoon, sir, golden trophy. How did the family sleep? Golden trophy. That's how it should work. That's the only way you can protect yourself. Joshua, I'm really surprised that you did not do a better deal with this Uncle Sam. This is the Uncle Sam with whom you could completely agree. I mean, like you, some people think that he's one of those guys who wants all his political opponents arrested. He wants them interrogated if they're lucky, eh? And if they're unfortunate, he just wants them behind bars, guilty or not. Lock them up. Lock them up. For him, the press is like the enemy of the people, especially the press that prints stuff that he doesn't agree with. Just as in Gola, the only press that is safe in Gola is the Hallelujah Choir from CRTV. It is the Radio Mille Collines run by Ernest Obama and Sismondi Bijoka. Those ones, they are safe. Everybody else, oh my goodness, you are getting ready to be stoned. Now I know one other thing, Joshua. I know why you are angry. They picked the wrong moment. How can they pick this moment? Tonight, for instance, you have to make that speech to the young people, to tell them all the lies that you have been cooking up about how they are the future, how they are the present. Joshua, you have already told one big lie. You said young people are the key to the future. And when they get to the future, you take away the key, Joshua. This was a wrong time to cut financial support, because you were looking to buy bread and sardine for all those citizens of Jenga and Crayfish Republic who were going to be out tomorrow. How do they say? March pass? You have your birthday coming up, and you were thinking about going back to the Intercontinental. Not only is the Intercontinental not going to be hosting you, but you can't even go anywhere. Now, Joshua, if you think about it, you should be happy. Look, grandson Manu Macron was very forceful. He came out immediately. He knows he owes you. So very quickly he came out and said, I'll continue to give you money. Have you taken time to check? Maybe all these stories about cut off in military supply and military assistance, this is just fake news. Didn't you hear what the ambassador said? They will continue cooperation. But he did not say that they did not cut money. He just said they will continue cooperation. It may be fake news. Never know. Peddled by the enemies of the people. This Uncle Sam, he shares your infatuation of winning all the time. winning bigly, winning fatly all the time. Like when you want to cheat, you don't have any qualms. You just cheat, like open broad daylight stealing. I appreciate the fact that you need the help of a good Samaritan. As you already know, a good Samaritan doesn't have to come from Samaria. There are some good Samaritans that have come from Russia. They don't even have to be physically with you. They could be on some computer terminal, working their way on something that absolutely helps you. I give you a good example of a good Samaritan in Angola. The Constitutional Council. You get in trouble, the Constitutional Council is there. That's what I'm talking about. You get beaten on your way to Damascus? No, the Constitutional Council is there. You get beaten on the way to the presidency? The Constitutional Council is there. That's what's called a good Samaritan. Really well done. You should have found someone like that. You've got almost everything that aligns with Uncle S that I don't understand why nothing is working. It should be working because, see, you got the family around you, you got the tribe, he's got the political tribe, he's got the family around him. I mean, with so much in common with this Uncle Sam, it should be a blessing. You should not be in so much hot water. I mean, if you are in hot water, can you imagine if instead of Uncle Sam winning this election, it was Auntie Sam Hillary who won? Can you imagine? Or in the future, can you imagine dealing in the future with someone like Auntie Sam Warren? That would be a disaster for political crooks like you. You have been listening to Ambazonia Calling. We came to you from our studios here in Washington, D.C. Our producers today, Jeff McCoy, Logistics, Joe Costa, and Krista Cunningham. Our music is from Ken Wanaku, the monk, from Balikumato Zatzekov himself, from William Ford, an Amber music star of blessed memory, from Eric Matisse on the web at soundimage.org, and from Prince Ajua Alem of Ajam, Sonicatron, USA. Ambazonia Calling is a joint production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. You can find us on the web at missionstribune.com, at compassfreepress.com, and at africafreedomnetwork.com. Next Sunday is another date. Until then, keep the spirit, keep the faith, keep up the good fight for justice and independence for Ambazonia. Stay Amber strong.